Are you overwhelmed by the challenge of personalizing communication for thousands of students? That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. From nudging prospective students to guiding those already on their journey, AI assistants don't just automate, they write, build, and optimize every step of your digital campaigns. Discover how at element451.com/AI team.
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about. Wait!
Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
Welcome to a special edition of Higher Ed Pulse. I'm your host, Mallory Wilsey, and this is Enrollify's 2024 Hall of Fame, a celebration of the year's most impactful thought leaders. We've curated key moments from our Hall of Famers' appearances across the Enrollify network, highlighting the ideas and insights that are shaping the future of our industry. From groundbreaking takes on AI to bold strategies for student engagement, these voices set the tone for innovation in 2024. Let's jump right into today's episode. Today, we welcome Dr. Nick Ladany to the Enrollify 2024 Hall of Fame. As president of San Francisco Bay University, Dr. Ladany is a forward-thinking leader driving innovation and disruption in higher ed. With a focus on transparency, meaningful relationships, and data-driven strategies, he is redefining the student experience. This year, Dr. Ladany joined Jamie Hunt on Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, yours truly on Higher Ed Pulse, and Ray Lutsky on Mastering the Next. In the following clips, Dr. Ladany discusses the disruption facing the higher ed industry and the importance of fostering meaningful relationships with students. From faculty and staff to peers and even AI, these connections are critical to supporting students' academic and personal well-being. Dr. Ladany also highlights how data-driven strategies and AI can play a vital role in identifying and addressing student needs, promoting mental health, and building resilience. These tools are essential for preparing students for lifelong success. Finally, Dr. Ladany underscores the importance of transparency in higher ed and the responsibility universities have to identify meaningful and measurable metrics to ensure accountability and progress. Now, let's hear from Dr. Ladany.
Any industry eventually gets disrupted or be reimagined at some point. You think of WhatsApp and the phone industry, you think of Tesla and the automobile industry. Well, higher ed has not had that full disruption yet. We thought the online mechanisms and modalities would be that disruption. It turns out it was not. Well, we do think in the current environment where there's the demographic shift, there's differences in modalities and how we're able to actually impart knowledge to students. Student bodies themselves are different in all kinds of ways. We really think it's a place for us to begin to disrupt the higher ed industry. And in large part because we have the resources and the wherewithal to make those changes. And I'm happy to share more with you about what those changes are.
Yeah, tell me about those.
So there's a number of things going on. We thought, well, what would it take to build a university from scratch? To first start with this idea of we're going to be radically student-centered. And everything was going to be built around that. So instead of a traditional university, which is about the faculty or about the institution or about the donor that founded it, we said we're going to start with the student. And then we're going to build a university around that. So we made sure that everything around the student in terms of the curriculum and then the co-curriculum helps support the student with the North Star of graduating in theory, 100% of our students in 4 years. You start with that premise and then build that. What we learned was you need to change the core curriculum to make it relevant, industry relevant, and student relevant. We changed that. We also had to change how faculty operated in universities. So faculty, although they're wonderful in terms of their content knowledge, they don't always have the curriculum background. In fact, most don't have any education in teaching and how to teach. So we're training our educators and training our faculty on how to teach and meet the students where they're at. But we're also looking at comprehensive wellness, unlimited mental health, student support services, academic support services, really, again, everything around the student to help them graduate in 4 years. And that was the premise for what we've come up with at the current time.
How
are you thinking about integrating AI to impact the student experience? So I'm thinking about the ways that AI can help a student persist through their 3, 4, 5, 6 years at an institution when they have that mental health challenge, when they have a food insecurity, but it's on a Saturday afternoon. We don't want to be in a position where our students can't get answers 24/7, but we also don't want to require our human staff members to be working 24/7. So, where does AI come into the student experience impact in a meaningful way?
Well, I like the word you use, meaningful, because we talk a lot about the student experience as having 6 pillars, and one of them is multiple meaningful relationships. It's a relationship with faculty. We know that deep experiences with meaningful relationships with faculty are important, deep, meaningful relationships with staff, with their peers. So we're trying to create this wraparound, and there's nothing to say that they can't have a meaningful experience with AI as part of that. So we know, for example, we can be data informed of what the student is doing and not doing. Not so much in a big brother way, but more the idea of we know if they don't go to the dining hall for a couple of days in a row, something's going on. But most people won't notice that. Even their peers may not be fully aware of that. But if they're not using their card to get this food, that'll tell us that something is triggering. So we could then have someone reach out to them. If they need mental health services, it should be available 24/7. If they need other services, it should be available. Many services can be offered through AI outside of the classroom periods.
Terrific. Where we started this conversation was your goal to disrupt higher ed. And I think we can all agree we're in an industry that is ripe for disruption. And it just sounds like you've taken a very unique approach to this. How much of what you're doing at San Francisco Bay University has been influenced by your long career in this industry and what you've seen work and not work at other schools?
Yeah, I really like that question, because that's really what this has been about, is the culmination of my 30 plus years in the industry and seeing what really works. You know, the faculty that are there for their students, that deeply care about their students, we want more of them in the industry. Faculty that are not, we want less of them in the industry. And we've got an industry where faculty are perhaps overprotected, frankly. If we're really being honest, if you look back and say, go back to your undergraduate experience, who are the best faculty and who are the worst? We all can name them. But it's true of any industry, physicians, lawyers. We always want to go with the best. And in higher ed, we owe it to our students that we give them the best. So I think in that realm, it's certainly important. You know, there's a lot of talk now about DEI and, you know, the tropical challenges with DEI. Well, frankly, we've always had challenges around DEI in higher education. We've not done a good job, and that's why a lot of the DEI work came about, was because higher ed failed largely students of color, and frankly, we're still failing them. And this resistance to understanding how DEI is important as part of the process for students is frankly, as they say, anti-DEI. What does that really mean, anti-DEI? I'm against diversity, I want exclusion, and I want no equity. Well, that's just nonsense. That's anti-intellectual. And that's what bothers me about the anti-DEI movement. It's anti-intellectual, which is what college should be about, is being intellectual, thinking through the things that we're doing in a meaningful way. So I think those are some examples, I hope, that shed light on that.
Nick, I appreciate that you have taken time out of your busy schedule at ASU GSV to talk to me. What are you most looking forward to this week as we transition from the air show to the summit?
Well, I'm really interested in seeing what is the innovation that's taking place in higher education. I still think it's too slow. I think what we're doing is farther ahead than anyone else that I know in terms of what we're thinking about comprehensively to do it at San Francisco Bay University. But I am interested in when I see a topic on mental health, for example. I saw one of those. I want to know what they're doing around mental health. And are they really meaningfully able to impact student mental health in higher ed? You know, I've heard a lot of folks in higher ed when I talk about unlimited mental health services. Well, that's not what higher ed is about. Of course it's what it's about. If you want to limit it to only 10% of what the student does, the academic piece, then fine, you're going to be limiting who you're affecting. But if you really want to impact all students, want to know more about what's happening, what's the long-term consequences of the pandemic. I think there's a long tail for what's happening to students in terms of big T and little t traumas around the pandemic that we are not really thinking about. I want to understand how folks are using data to capture and understand students are in distress. And then when they're doing well, how do we urge them forward and build upon their strengths? So it's both. It's not just catching students and making sure they're taken care of, which is very important. But when the students are doing well, how do we keep encouraging them to keep doing better? How do we provide that resilience that allows them to succeed in lifelong careers? So all the stuff that we're talking about here at the summit is very exciting to me, because I think a lot of the data-informed strategies, the AI strategies to capture some of this data and use it in proactive and pro-social ways, that's what I'm interested in.
Well, I like that question a lot, because in part it focuses institutions on what they should be transparent about. And to be fair, most universities are telling everyone what they're doing. It's not like they're not sharing it to some extent, but no one's cobbling it together. U.S. News and World Report is a very bad example for what makes for a good university. But if you want to understand whether a university is healthy, you need people to look at their finances. You can get some of that through the 990s or through some of their audited financials. But most parents aren't, first of all, going to dive that deep or look at that very seriously, because it's hard to understand what universities are doing. But universities should have metrics that are standard expectations. Graduation rate's one variable. You're never going to get 100% because you don't expect every student necessarily to graduate. But if you were to take a university and say, what would be the right percentage of graduation? I think 80% is probably a reasonable expectation for a university in 4 years to make. If they can't do that, we need to understand why, but you can't put it on the student. That's what I hear a lot. Well, we didn't have the right students coming in, or the students aren't as prepared as they used to. Well, then prepare them. That's the job of the instructor. But if you've got a workforce that doesn't know how to teach, largely doesn't understand what teaching is about and what are best practices in pedagogy, well, you put them at a disadvantage, and you put the students ultimately at a disadvantage.
Dr. Ladany, congratulations on being inducted into the Enrollify 2024 Hall of Fame. Your leadership and commitment to transparency, innovation, and student success are inspiring a new era in higher ed. The Higher Ed Pulse is part of the Enrollify Podcast Network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our show helps higher ed marketers and admission pros find their next big idea and features a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Brian Gross, Eddie Francis, Jenny Lee Fowler, and so many of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.